Starting record. All right, we are recording. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the virtual brown bag of April 8th of 2021. As usual, we let everybody know that we record these meetings, and since we also encourage folks to, just participate in the conversation and share things, just make sure whatever you're sharing, it's not going to cause you trouble with your clients or employers, but by all means, please, participate in the conversation. The virtual brown bag is a place where we get together, we share tips and tricks, experiences, frustrations, the things that get under our skin as we're trying to accomplish things. Sometimes we do address them, so we come here, we share how we've done it. Sometimes we cannot address them. We come here and we share it because maybe somebody else has gone through the same kind of pain, or if nobody has yet, we can still, talk about it and hopefully, point folks in the right direction or in a direction. It's not supposed to be a one-way conversation. Usually somebody, throws out there a topic and we start talking about it, right? No, we don't have a prearranged agenda most of the time. Logistics, we do this every Thursday from 12 to 1 Central Time here on Skype. Please feel free to share the link and the information with coworkers, friends, other people who you think could be, benefiting from these discussions. So, bring them over. This is a partial list of topics we've discussed, so just so that you have an idea, like how far we can go into topics. Sometimes it can be very technical, sometimes it can be more like soft skills type of things. It's really whatever folks feel like talking about. We have a virtualbrownbag.com website where you can always find a link to this meeting here, as well as a link to the Slack channel that we have where we can further discussions or maybe propose some topics for an upcoming meeting. That's fine too. And if you keep scrolling on that page, we have links to the videos of the previous meetings. And by the way, the 1-year anniversary of our, I guess, third reboot of the Virtual Brown Bag is coming up next week. It's going to be 1 year since pretty much the pandemic started, and we figure, might as well bring back the Virtual Brown Bag. It's a good opportunity for that. So other than that, let's get things rolling. So what are you guys up to?
I do have cool things that I've done, but I am not set up to share them at all for in terms of code visualization. But maybe you could get there during this meeting.
Sure.
All right. I actually have.
Oh, you just went on mute, George.
Oh, hey, there you go. So hey, just a reminder, I'm not going to be around next week.
Right.
I do have cool things. I'm not set up to share them right now, but maybe I could get there during this meeting. Okay. I do have some questions I could ask.
All right.
I'll start with one that's really simple and hopefully quick. Claudio, you're on Windows a lot, I assume. Do you use chocolatey still, or does anyone else use chocolatey?
I was using it up until last year. On my new clients, I actually, when I got a new computer, I haven't put it on, so I haven't been using it.
So, I'll just talk about kind of my issue. So I did an install, and I have no idea where the thing installed to. Or never mind, there it is. Apparently my computer crashed and it restarted, and now it's there. All right, so so never mind that question. I do have another one though, and this one may be a little more useful to everyone, and a little more interesting, and I think more people might have input on this. So, I want to set up my SSH agent whenever I log into WSL. So in my profile, let's see. Nope. In my profile, I set up this, right? So SSH-agent. However, that means if I start more than one login shell, it asks me every time, even though my agent is already added. So how do I query SSH agent to see if my identity is already loaded in there? Like, does anyone know how to do that? And I mean, I know it's just some weird bash foo. I just really don't know what it is. Anyone?
Not me, man.
Okay.
I
don't know. Is it like SSH? Yeah. I there's got to be some way to do it. I don't know. Okay. Well, I'm gonna look into that because there's a couple things like that. Like, also, I need to like mount things that would just one time when I start up my WSL. All right. Well, that's fine. So there's other stuff I can share, but I'll cede the floor to anyone else on here who wants to show stuff or ask questions in the meantime. What has everyone else been working on?
Don't be shy.
So I was wondering, I'm new to this group, so I don't have a feel for what kind of stuff you usually discuss. Anybody have experience with like inventory management, like supply chain systems and software?
Depends on what you mean by that, I guess.
I have two use cases that I work for two companies that do very different things, but actually the problem I'm working on I feel is like the same. One is retail, so just like shipping items that are in the warehouse that need to be picked, they need to be packaged and shipped out to customers. They need to be reordered. And then the other thing is factory automation. That's the other job where you get like a list of models to be 3D printed, and then there's like a bunch of printers that you need to schedule that stuff on, and then you need to package them and like send them further down. And so on the retail side, I'm sure there's like gazillions of like various software of various quality that supports doing things like this. So like telling employees which orders to put in a box of which size and then ship it out, and then reorder boxes when they're empty, and prepare like alerts for when inventory needs to be reordered, like that kind of stuff. Does anybody have experience with either building something like that or like deploying something like that or using it?
I mean, yeah, I've done stuff related to that. Every situation I've been in, like, I've found it's been kind of a it hasn't been a build software from scratch situation. It's been like there already is a business with existing business processes, and they want those business processes captured and streamlined in software. So I'm just trying to think like anything more directly, but most of the time it's kind of along those lines, right? But like, oh yeah, also like the stuff I've been talking about has been more like delivery and things like that. I did a project half a year ago that was, it was all about like building a network of kind of like think like Uber Eats, but like kind of any sort of delivery stuff like that, and the deliveries can chain together and so on, which is different. But again, still like they're the people were telling me like how they wanted stuff to work, and we're kind of walking through that.
So did you work on the scheduling algorithms, or like how was, for example, like, which driver does which order get delivered to, and how do they get routed? Was that something you worked on, or how did that?
Yeah, so the routing stuff, we're offloading a service called Toucan, which is like an Indian company, I think, in Chandigarh, and with like pretty impressive software that was like, and an atrocious API. And actually, because we were building MVP, we kind of got to the point where we demonstrated how you would integrate it within, and they needed to go get funding to get more, to do more. So yeah, we didn't actually do that. As far as like scheduling who got stuff, like in our, well, I don't want to talk about it too much, but that part was actually fairly user facing. Like that part, but one of the things that was important, like we designed that to be very modular. So like basically there was a single module that the need for a order to be fulfilled would go in, and actually would be broken out into tasks. And then each of the tasks would go out over a message bus, and another component would figure out how each of those tasks might be fulfilled. So, for example, a task might it might decide that a particular task would be kind of posted into an up for grabs message board, or sent to a specific message boards, or it might automatically assign stuff. So it was done like in a very modular fashion like that. Now it didn't work on the algorithms because we didn't need to do anything like that automatically. It was just kind of the infrastructure. So yeah, that's not
so what kind of stakeholders did you like? What was your role, and like who did you communicate with? Like who was doing the supply chain or whatever, the big design of the whole thing? With do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I mean, like I was the main architect, where I was kind of putting together, but it was also the entire point of this was like an early MVP project to kind of get it to the point where they could pitch for money, where they could show something, show the vision of what it looked like and pitch. So it wasn't like, so the idea was get that done, and then at the same time set up like the architecture for success, so they wouldn't have to rewrite it like down the line, like where it was flexible enough to capture all the ways that the business was going to evolve. So it was, again, kind of it was a very, very early phase.
So did you have to think about metrics in the future to help the business identify like bottlenecks and like which parts need optimization? Did you have to think about that up front?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, that's part of the reason. So when I did it, we were kind of doing it cloud first sort of thing, except for a variety of reasons, I didn't want to actually be on the cloud first. So what we did was we were doing AWS. There's a project called Local Stack, which lets you like emulate a pretty reasonable chunk of the AWS cloud locally in a Docker container. So we were, as far as monitoring and all that stuff, like we're making that possible by breaking up the components into kind of these sensible microservices, and handling hooking up all the common patterns for how communication between them works. Like, okay, so an event happens, like this thing sends out an event, it goes out via an SNS, that flows over into SQS, and then other services pick that up as needed, and they figure out what to do with it. So we didn't actually have that. That was the part where I think addresses what you're talking about, where now, because you can see all those messages streaming back and forth, you can just basically get views of the bottlenecks. Now, again, we didn't actually just hit those areas, but that was the idea.
I was actually wondering about the business bottlenecks. So like say, I don't exactly know the product you were building, but let's assume the company wants to find out, like, do we need more drivers?
Yeah.
Did you have to build like metrics? So one thing that I'm realizing on this, like the thing I'm working on, the retail, it's like going at full speed.
Yeah.
And so the shippers, the people who actually put like products in boxes, those are the bottlenecks. Like shipping is where, we don't need to optimize how customer support handles orders, or the poor people picking products up from the warehouse have to like route themselves. Like sadly, they'll have to wait because shippers are the bottlenecks, and then shippers are actually like physically, we can't push them further. Like they'll just collapse. So however, to figure that out, we had to like instrument a lot of things, like every barcode scan that we weren't kind of really logging. When they load the information on their screen, we were like, oh, it's an HTTP GET. Like we don't really care about that one. Those actually proved out to be the most important to do metrics. It's just like when from the first scan to the next first scan, like how long do they take? So I was wondering if you had like some non-obvious things to build from the get-go for that kind of stuff.
No, not obvious. So for us, it was all like, okay, here's the product of this unit of work, and that's going out a message, and we can have monitoring on the queues because then we know, and that's going to be our notification of bottlenecks. But it sounds like you're looking for something deeper, a little deeper than that. So I don't think I have anything for that.
Yeah, the question is each week is like, should we work on like the customer service side of things? Like, do we need to make it easier for them to refund, or should we like do this? Should we optimize printing labels by like 2 seconds? Which you know you'd think like we don't care about optimizing printing labels. Like who cares about 2 seconds?
Yeah.
And then actually wondering like, actually does it make a difference? Anyway, that's what I'm struggling with right now. Is just like figuring out with the business owners like what should we focus or limited development time on. And mostly right now it's like building the right SQL queries and Redash, which I think is going to be work for the next month or so.
Yeah, I mean, I would expect a lot of that stuff to like fall under like business decisions, though, right? Isn't that like are y'all treating that that in that way, like, or are you just one of the business stakeholders?
It's a pretty scruffy startup. Like I'm good friends with the owners, and so they didn't have much of a process in place to sync with developers. Like they would just tell these two freelancers kind of what they were envisioning. Freelancers were not really interested in the product; they would just like build the tickets. Right. So just adding some kind of identifying what the product actually is one discussion, and then how to map that to tasks that the developers would be happy to take on is like what I'm currently doing. So yeah, it's both like product management and project management. Yeah. And I
don't know. Is anyone else working on that?
Well, I am getting to.
You're muted, Claudio.
Hello.
Or we just don't have audio.
I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear him just fine.
Okay, good. Yeah, last night I was having. You can hear it? Can you hear me, George? Huh.
Yeah.
I think the problem is on your side, George.
You're the problem, George.
Such a troublemaker. Okay, interesting. Yeah, because last night I was on a call when I was the one that couldn't be heard. Oh, yeah. Okay. I think I think it just dropped off and you rejoined. But yeah, I am working on a project where I will be hitting something like that in the next couple of months. In the next couple of months that have to do with, shippers and warehouse and, delivering and all that stuff. So that is, I don't have clear solutions for that. We are developing from the standpoint of trying to understand the main workflows, from taking orders, through going to the warehouse and then, the pickers.
Is it
picking the item in the ship. Yeah,
do you handle the whole part of the like from order to shipping, or are you just part of a bigger chain?
It's part of a bigger chain, yeah, because there is the other side of the equation that is like purchasing the things that are going to be sold, so it gets like both ends of the spectrum. And I do see what so we are trying to make sure that we work with the business to understand like currently what their main bottlenecks are, right? So like what are the pain points that the users currently have, so that when we build the new system, we take those into account and trying to put some things in place. But I do see what you're looking for, like trying to identify the bottlenecks, not in the system per se, but in the business process, right? So the things that are not in the system, like you cannot make people just work faster, right? Like if they're at the warehouse and, whatever happens between when they see something on the screen, they pick boxes and then put it in the truck, for example, what happens in between there? It's outside of the system.
The
So
cool
how
thing
do we
is that
identify-
as software developers, we have this understanding of queuing and like parallelizing, you know, scaling horizontally versus scaling vertically, or like latency issues, deadline issues. Did you read The Goal, the book by?
Yes.
So
When as you're talking about bottlenecks, it came to me like theory of constraints. It's like, okay, that bottleneck may shift. So how do we even identify the bottleneck to begin with, right? So maybe putting some things in the system where we don't know what the bottlenecks are, but we may have some dashboards that will indicate in which part of that process, we have a bottleneck, and then tackle it and see, okay, what is the next bottleneck now that we've addressed that first one? Right?
yes, the probes that I've put in place is like the same as you would for a cloud solution like on AWS, which is latency, you know, from start to end, just like the duration of things, then the throughput at different points in time. So like how many orders get like assembled per hour. And then the most important currently really is like what I call distributed tracing. Is like you want to trace an order from when it's placed to when it gets to the end, like every point in time, because that's what customer support is going to look at, and it's going to say like, oh, it got assembled at this point in time. And if it went wrong, we can then identify like, is there a shipper that just like screws them all up?
Okay.
And it's not easy because at some points the orders will get batched, and the people who do the batching, they actually don't care about orders. They just have a list of items to pick up. So you kind of have to trace the order through that point where the order is not existing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to deal with the database model for that, but like the tools are one-to-one the same. It's like if you
Right. Interesting. Yeah, it is definitely a complex domain. Constraints.
Nope, we can't hear you now.
it is
There we
a
go.
great problem because you get every little thing. Like there's a ton of algorithms that I would like to get into to just like optimize things, and currently it's not too much of an issue because the shippers are the bottleneck. But just looking at like how do we make the shippers quicker? Like should we currently have like 4 lines and 3 shippers on each line, and they each have the same stack of different boxes of different sizes, and just optimizing their heuristics of how many plants to put in each box because it's plants.
Okay.
Like some shippers are really good. They have like 5 trees incoming. They'll be like, I need 2 boxes of this size and 1 of this, and then they'll get it. And then the other ones are like, they take the wrong sized box, so they have to like put it back, take the next one. So we're thinking about potentially have some heuristics of which plants go on which line, and these lines have like these boxes more available than others.
Okay.
The cool thing with trees is that, or like plants, is that the sizes will change over time. Like the same item will grow just as it's longer in an inventory. So we're gonna see if that's something we can tackle this year, or if it's like something for next year.
Interesting. Very cool. Excellent. George, are you back on? Can you hear us? I can hear you. Good.
I'm better. Like no, that's an annoying ass thing about Skype. So I plugged in my second monitor, and the audio switched to its audio channel. But Skype preferences, if you test audio, it plays it over the right one, even though the actual audio is on the wrong one.
Gotcha.
Freaking Skype.
There's a lot of low-hanging fruit in software. That's extremely complex. So I'm kind of new to these things. How traditionally does this virtual brown bag work? Like, because I come in a couple minutes late, and y'all are deep in what appears to be like a process optimization conversation, and so like how do y'all jump in and go with these things?
Who wants to talk about what?
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
I'm,
really, that's it.
I'm new to this, so I just jumped in with what I'm currently dealing with.
Yeah, and
Is
go
is it
ahead.
typically the same group of, or at least like a very similar group of people that meet?
Yeah, we usually get about five to 10 people on, ish.
Right.
Yeah,
Some recurring
that's pretty much
incidents.
it.
Yeah, because I'm thinking like, do y'all been building up just like uh historical understandings of each other's domains and problem spaces and things like that, that kind of leads to these conversations being a little bit more not let's start from scratch every time.
Yeah. Oh,
Right.
do we? Like Claudio and I have known each other for like 13, 14 years, so
Right.
somewhat, but I mean, Claudio works in contracting. I did for like 10 years as well. So like the stuff we're working on tends to change.
Are you solo or are you part of a company that contracts?
I am a few things. I 9 to 5 leading our development at a payment processing company. So that's what I do daily. And then we started a dev agency and we have about 12 employees. And so they're upstairs from my office. So my company's upstairs and my 9 to 5 is downstairs. So pretty cool. And we, so like on that side, for the most part, what I do for the agencies that we have is jumping in ad hoc at bigger problems and helping, and then coming back somewhat after projects and helping spin some of that into like our base project that's like, hey, these things are kind of are problems we see coming up a lot. Let's kind of move this into our kind of starter, or at least pull down some concepts so when we hit these challenges again, we can kind of go quicker in those directions. On the payment processing side, what we do is we are essentially more of an integration company in that we integrate with a lot of different ERPs, billing systems, CRMs, and we essentially at a basic level, we pull all of their AR data out, offer their customers the ability to pay online, and then push the payment information back into them, whether that's through a report, automated FTP, or real time through APIs that they give us. And we kind of take data however they want. We'll take it all the way from a PDF that we scrape all the way through real time APIs. And then as far as the processing side, we integrate with a lot of different gateways. And so we kind of have the gateways that make the most sense for us when our customers are open to them. But at the same time, if a customer has a pre-existing relationship with a processor, we typically, a lot of times we're already integrated into them, but sometimes we have no problem. Like, if we have people come with Chase, cool, we just jump on with Chase and go through the certification process to send them NACHA files and stuff. So we live very much in like the ingestion and kind of ETL world of getting data in and then pushing all that data back out in a lot of different formats.
So what's the value added for your customers? Is just like interfacing with more
the
payment
value added
methods?
is they have ancient systems that don't allow digital payments at all. And so we come in and we say, don't change your billing system, don't change your process, don't change anything. Give us 3 pieces of data they can pay online. We won't charge your company any money. We'll tack a service fee on, and the payments will just show up in your billing system for free to you as a company. So that's the value add. Now there's lots of other additional value adds on top of that. It's like, do you want to give us line item data? Cool. We can actually build PDF invoices. Do you want to take PDF invoices and turn it into paperless billing so you pay less for your actual bills? Cool. Let's go that route. Do you want to take those same customers and notify them when they have a bill coming up? Cool. We can go that route. But it essentially starts with nothing more than an account number, an account name, and a balance that someone wants to pay. Like 3 pieces of very, very low risk data.
Cool.
So that's where we live.
Do you like it?
and
Do you have fun?
I have a lot of fun actually, because the first half of my career I was a lot more front end. And here it's forced me to jump into the whole system side of things. Because, and then like figuring out where to split it, because not only do we do web payments, we have an IVR system. So we spun up a system that does IVR. How does that interact? Then, that's calls, that's text to pay. And so there's a whole lot of things aside from the learning how to like properly handle data and stuff like that, and always being aware and digging. Like you talked about distributing tracing, and so like the number one thing I leaned the heaviest into when I took this position was observability. It's like I don't doubt that I'm going to fail at some time, but I need to know everything that ever happened in every scenario, with the caveat of making sure that I'm not leaking sensitive information at the same time. So I leaned heavily into the tracing side to know, it's not what was the, making sure you take all the simple things. Don't look at the database, look at what it was when this happened and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's always like these jobs sound like terrible at first. You're like, oh, you're interfacing with like COBOL mainframes and you have like 15 different formats. But then as an architect or someone who likes systems and doing large scale integration, it's like paradise, because you have all these weird constraints, like you can't overload this machine. It's like rate limited.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to design like a rate limit system, which is really fun to build usually.
And like it's the best part is, so I did a whole bunch in the consulting world early in my career. Then I spent some time in the enterprise world where, like, so in the beginning, consulting was breadth of projects. And the enterprise, it was like your overhead, buddy. Sure, we have to have a dev department. So, but in enterprise, it was just low risk. There was no pressure in the enterprise. Like it was on cruise control. I could go work 35 hours a week and not care, Being in the product space, the best part, or the part I'm most enjoying, is walking the line of how much do you ship the features versus how much do you design to be able to react to when inevitably you have to pivot in certain directions. And so one of the things I'm going through right now is in the original version of the system. So we came in, we made a lot of changes to the original system. And about 18 months ago, we just saw a lot of issues. We tried to work on the first version for a while, but we just kind of had some differences, and we kind of spun up a V2, not in the camp of everything needs to be a rewrite. Absolutely understand that's not always the answer. But in this one, we tried and we kind of came to that direction. And so we pulled in that old system, essentially they would build classes for every different type of integration. And, so in this one, we kind of went with a little bit more investment into like a in-app ETL process, kind of to get the data in. And that's been pretty great, because now we can pull in all kinds of different things without any problems, any deployments. But at the same time, there were some missteps in that. And so now figuring out, okay, at what point do I keep shipping these other features versus at what point do I come back to this same piece of functionality and restructure it to be a whole lot more solid, while making sure that I don't take down the current processes that are constantly running at the same time. And so figuring out how to, and how do you do that on a, iterative process? How can I turn the new code on for one customer? How can I turn it on for the next 10 customers? So that, like, because I'm pushing payment data into their system, so I want to turn it on for a low risk customer for the first one, then turn it on and monitor, and then turn it on for 10 customers and monitor, and then turn it on for everyone else, but be able to revert back to the old way that's trusted as well. And so we just did some of that stuff, and that's kind of the part that I've been enjoying the most here recently, is kind of that type of work. So, and honestly, like it actually did happen. There was one unhandled scenario where for about 12 minutes, one of our customers that fell into this weird configuration wasn't getting charged a service fee. And so I was like, oh, flip it back to the old code real quick with a button click. And now all of a sudden it was back happening again. And so that observability is what kind of saved us there. As we turned it on, it's like, hey, this is happening. So flip it back real quick.
How do you approach architecture? Like, what kind of process and tools do you use, and how do you communicate that? Like, how big is the team that's going to build like all these services?
Me and 2 juniors over the past
Okay,
18 months.
So you can literally whiteboard yourself through it.
Oh yeah, like I have a ton of I live in like Whimsical is my current favorite tool for like flowcharting. It's pretty awesome on the design chart.
What is it called?
It's called Whimsical. You can think of it as like it's like it's a web app, but they nailed it. I use that for a lot of my process flow. There's also I'm very much a list person. And so I've dug into I just live in Markdown. And so in here recently, I've kind of started using Obsidian, which is just like kind of Roam. So I get to have, if you've done with the Roam research type things, that kind of ability to link to other concepts is really great. Obsidian's like an open source version of that. And so I kind of build on those little pieces and build it out. But I have everything from like high level concept maps down to this feature. Like currently, like the current thing that I'm thinking through right now is how do I restructure our AR import system. And so the naive approach basically just took a bunch of different types of inputs, converted it to our standard shape, keeping the metadata, and then applied it. What I want to do is I want to stick like a staging table in between, and I want it to pull it into like a staging table, but in some scenarios automatically apply that staging table. So, but in some, because we have people that manually upload files, we have people that drop them off in an FTP, we have real-time APIs that give them up one at a time. So I want to be able to, like in this configuration, still run through the staging table. So I still get to treat my code like it has a single path or whatever, but just automatically apply it and let the triggers kind of happen. And so my current process right now is like, okay, let me list out all the ways in which we sync accounts. Let me think about all the effects and kind of post-processing that needs to happen at each step along the way. And then kind of step back and see if I can kind of arrange those pieces to come up with like a pretty common interface for the most part. Like I don't really feel like I'm going to find some perfect interface, but how can I do that? And how can I, at the same time, introduce a little bit more observability into the process? Like, how can I not just have that staging table, but maybe have another log of, hey, you pulled in this piece of data. This is the unique key for that piece of data that we can identify. We can call it maybe an insert here, and I can just drop a meta JSON column over here. Like this is the raw data that came in at this timestamp from this unique key. So if I need to kind of go backwards and look at all these different pieces, that can do that as well. As far as scale goes, I think my the V2 system, which isn't quite up to pace with our current system, which is still V1 that's running in production. We're gaining a lot of new clients as well as migrating old clients on to V2. And I think the system I'm responsible for is processing over 100,000 payments a month. So it's not massive, but it's certainly not small. So. And these are typically municipalities and businesses providing this service to their customers. Cool, so that's some backstory on like the things that I have going on. And like, that's kind of one of the reasons I kind of reached out and like found, and George mentioned this, is because going through this, I was like, hey, I'm going to see myself hitting a lot of these things, everything from the design side to the infrastructure side. Like, I have this part, but like the last thing I was jumping into was doing zero downtime deployments. And so we got that all solved and figured out. And like, that's actually pretty great now as well. So I can do zero downtime deployments. So it's like living across the whole stack, from listening to our sales guy tell us what he needs, to architecting, to giving it to our junior devs for the smaller things, to jumping into the infrastructure side, to like solving support issues when the account sync messes up.
Cool.
So I hope to jump on these a lot more and kind of, tell you guys my problems and get your feedback.
Totally.
Great. Yeah, I took note of Whimsical, which I was not familiar with, and then I'm looking up Obsidian, because Rome has come up, a couple of meetings ago.
Yes.
Right, George?
Yeah, big fan of using it in emex here. Yeah. I've been using it for about a year, and it's awesome. It's such a good database, like just knowledge base. I started on my new job like 2 months ago, less than 2 months ago. I mean, five weeks ago, and just having a big network database of like all my notes and thoughts is awesome. Like I'll just go into a meeting and come out with like 15, 20 new notes, and they're all like interlinked. It's great.
Yeah, I tried Obsidian and things like that a while back, and it didn't quite work for me that much. And then I was digging in a little bit more, and I kind of started reading on the para method, PARA, and I tried doing that, and that's kind of what like started. Okay, I could do this now. That works a lot better for me.
Do you want to describe kind of para? I've read on it a little bit, and I tried it, but like it seemed extra to me. But I know a lot of people